Vani Hari is a revolutionary food activist, a New York Times bestselling author, co-founder of the organic food brand Truvani, and was named one of the most influential people on the internet by Time magazine. Vani started foodbabe.com to spread information about what is really in the American food supply. She teaches people how to make the right purchasing decisions at the grocery store, how to live an organic lifestyle, and how to travel healthfully around the world. You can find more about her in the show notes or by visiting foodbabe.com, and also be sure to check out her new cookbook, Food Babe Family, which dispels popular myths about feeding our kids, offers more than 100 delicious recipes that make it simple to put healthy, real food on the table, and helps parents start children on a lifelong path of making good food choices. And we're fortunate to be chatting with Vani after her participation in a historic event. She participated in a roundtable discussion in front of members of the U.S. Senate, led by Senator Ron Johnson. The discussion, titled American Health and Nutrition, A Second Opinion, aimed to provide a foundational and historical understanding of the changes in public sanitation, agriculture, food processing, and healthcare industries over the last century and their impact on national health. This nonpartisan panel brought together medical experts, advocates, and doctors to share their insights and expertise. To start the episode, we're going to play a short clip of Vani's testimony to members of the U.S. Senate. In a weird way, it sort of reminds me of before high school football games, listening to a bunch of like pump up music to get me fired up to go tackle someone really hard. That's the effect that it has on me. I don't know if it'll be the same effect for you, but it gets me just super stoked that we have people at this level talking about, things that are extremely important. And it really is a monumental time in history. And it's so cool to see Vani participating in it. So let's go ahead and roll that clip of Vani's testimony to members of the Senate.
Our government is letting U.S. food companies get away with serving American citizens harmful ingredients that are banned or heavily regulated in other countries. Even worse, American food companies are selling the same exact products overseas without these chemicals, but choose to continue serving us the most toxic version here. It's un-American. Let me give you some examples of McDonald's French fries. In the US, there's 11 ingredients. In the UK, there's 3, and salt is optional. An ingredient called dimethylpolysiloxane is an ingredient preserved with formaldehyde, a neurotoxin, in the US version. This is used as a foaming agent so they don't have to replace the oil that often, making McDonald's more money here in the United States. But they don't do that across the pond. This is Skittles. Notice the long list of ingredient differences. 10 artificial dyes in the US version and titanium dioxide. This ingredient is banned in Europe because it can cause DNA damage. Artificial dyes are made from petroleum, and products containing these dyes require a warning label in Europe that states it may cause adverse effects on activity and attention in children. And they have been linked to cancer and disruptions in the immune system. This on the screen back here is Gatorade. In the US, they use red 40 and caramel color. In Germany, they don't. They use carrot and sweet potatoes to color their Gatorade. General Mills is definitely playing some tricks on us. They launched a new version of Trix just recently in Australia. It has no dyes. They even advertise that when the US version still does. This is why I became a food activist. My name is Vani Hari, and I only want one thing. I want Americans to be treated the same way as citizens in other countries by our own American companies. For the last 60 years, almost all food additives were being created for one sole purpose: to improve the bottom line of the food industry and not improve our health. These chemicals were created to mimic real food, to make it easier and cheaper for food manufacturers to preserve their food, to make it last longer on the shelf, to help manufacturing, and sinister of all, to allow them to create products that are more addictive in nature. I ended up quitting my lifelong career as a corporate management consultant to investigate and write about food full-time. During my investigations, I found an alarming discovery. We use over 10,000 food additives here in the United States, and in Europe, there's only 400 approved. We were able to get Subway to remove azodicarbonamide from their bread in the United States after another successful petition. And as a bonus, there was a ripple effect, and almost every bread manufacturer in America followed suit. I want to make an important point here. Ordinary people who rallied for safer food, shared this information, and signed petitions were able to make these changes. We did this on our own. But isn't this something that the people in Washington, our elected politicians, should be doing? We deserve the same safer ingredients other countries get. We cannot allow our own American companies to treat us this way anymore. We've had enough. It's unethical, and it needs to stop.
That's so badass. That's like, and you bring up such an incredible point on the people are the ones who are creating the change by no longer supporting these companies and also sort of forcing change in those companies, saying we're not going to buy anything from you and we are exposing you to the world for the harmful stuff that you're putting in the food. Yeah, what was the experience like being in DC?
You know, it was surreal. And I keep using that word because it was absolutely surreal. The night before I did this testimony, I got to sit down with Representative Thomas Massey and Senator Bill Hagerty, and Robert Kennedy Jr. was at my table. And I had dinner with these guys. And, we sat down and there was a little awkward silence. And I looked around and I said, "Hey, guys, y'all know Trump was at Chick-fil-A today. What's going on?" and it started the conversation, and it was this beautiful 10-minute conversation about MSG, because MSG is one of the first ingredients in a Chick-fil-A chicken sandwich. And Bill Hagerty, who Senator Bill Hagerty, I had not known this, but he was the former ambassador of Japan. And so he was like, yeah, they used to actually, the way it was invented is they would feed it to the Japanese military so that they would eat more, because they were under so much stress that they wouldn't eat enough and they would, not have enough energy to perform. And I was like, yeah, and they also feed it to rats in obesity studies so they become fat. And so we can test all our obesity related drugs on them. Right. And so, I had these amazing conversations. And I think about Representative Tom Massey. He has a farm in Kentucky that he talked about growing, and raising grass-fed cattle and feeding that to his daughters, and how he thinks his daughters didn't go through puberty like early like everybody else because they weren't being inundated with growth hormones from the industrial food system. And so I was having these conversations that were blowing my mind. I mean, RFK told me that Rachel Carson had gone to his house and he got to meet her as a young, man. And I'm like, these conversations are just incredible. And I'm like, why isn't the media or anybody in the mainstream news covering this topic? Why aren't we having these conversations at a wide scale? Yeah. And it's because everything is literally controlled by big food, big pharma, big chem, and they're squashing our voices. And I have never witnessed something so profound as in the last 24 hours of doing that in Washington. What has gone down in terms of who's actually covering this and who's not. What we did yesterday was so historic. We were talking about things that had never been talked about at that level. I'm so glad you played that clip, because I can guarantee nobody's shown the differences between Fruit Loops in Canada and Fruit Loops in the United States. The boxes look exactly the same. I'm holding it up for everyone listening right now. And, the Canadian version has blueberry and watermelon juice to color it. And the American version has 4 different artificial food dyes linked to hyperactivity in children and the endocrine disrupting chemical BHT that's linked to cancer. So, we've got a situation now where our American food supply is literally on notice and they need to change, and we're going to hold them accountable.
Incredible. The work you're doing is so incredible, Vani. Like the work you've already done, and it's just going to get better and better and better, especially with what happened yesterday. So was this to a specific committee of the Senate? This hearing?
Yes. So Senator Ron Johnson wanted to create a nonpartisan roundtable to discuss these issues in Washington in one of the most iconic rooms, the Kennedy Caucus room. I mean, I walked in there and I just was like jaw dropping beautiful. It was so insane.
The architecture?
The architecture, the ceiling, the chandeliers. I was just like, I was in awe of the
That's
moment.
been an obsession of mine lately, but that's a topic that we don't, like who actually built that stuff. But the architecture is in government buildings, I think intentionally that way. Whoever built it, irrespective of all the details, they occupy those buildings to sort of be able to say, look at the beauty that we embody, look at the power that we have, look at this ornate architecture versus look at these boxes that all these contractors make for you all to live in and work in. Yeah, but that's another topic. But yeah, I'm sure the building was incredibly beautiful.
It was absolutely surreal. And you know, Senator Ron Johnson is a hero, in my opinion, for bringing us all together in this way. You know, I've been out of party politics for a long time. Even though I was a delegate in 2012, I used my delegate status to protest in front of the Secretary of Agriculture on the issue of GMO labeling. Back then, we didn't know if something was genetically engineered or not. Now we have those labels on our food. And it was one of the things that I felt that transparency needed to be done. And Obama in 2008 made that campaign promise on the campaign trail, but never did it. And so I wanted to hold him accountable. I wanted to hold the Secretary of Agriculture at the time, Tom Vilsack, accountable. I wanted to hold Michelle Obama accountable as well, because she was really into these issues. And I'd used my, status because it was North Carolina. I was a North Carolina delegate at the time, and the DNC happened to be in Charlotte, my hometown in North Carolina. So they gave us the front row to sit in. And so I used my status to protest for that issue. And I would say that was probably my first kind of big activism kind of push where it made the national stage. And I realized that I no longer wanted to be kind of involved in party politics. I thought it would be more effective to just handle issues when they arise and actually educate the American public about what's happening to the food supply and let them know the truth about what's happening. Because even in the 24 hours I was in Washington, right? A little bit longer than that, but even the 24 hours, I saw how party politics come into play just based on who's allowed in the conversation, who's not allowed in the conversation, and who's willing to share this information about this roundtable on social media, and what partners are really aligned and which ones aren't, what social media voices are actually for the health of Americans and which ones are more for making sure their particular political party stays in office. And I'm not about that. You know what I mean? I think I'm more effective as an activist, as an independent. Even though I'm still a registered Democrat in the system somewhere in Mecklenburg County, I've not voted 100% one way for a very long time. I vote for the candidate. And sometimes listening to you, Alec, I want to stop voting because I don't think it matters, right? And
you see the examples in your own life, right? Like there's a reason that you no longer wanted to be sort of in this delegate party politics position, because you realize that you could affect more change just by getting the people ignited and to understand this and then make better decisions. Because from what I've come to understand, and maybe you agree or disagree, we'll see. I'd imagine you agree, but I won't put words in your mouth. It seems that our government regulatory agencies, and the Senate has the power to regulate the USDA and then the FDA. It seems like overwhelmingly they're bought out to big corporations. You could even say that our government is a form of plutocracy. Of course, this is another topic that I've covered on here, that our government's actually a corporation. But setting that aside, our government behaves as a plutocracy, meaning that it's ruled by the wealthy. It's ruled by the wealthy companies and the wealthy people and the bankers. And so they're driving decisions. So in order to get them to actually change things, when they sort of make us seem that we have a massive amount of say in government, and in some cases we might, but the best way to change things is by hitting their pockets. When you hit their pockets en masse, when you are no longer buying from their companies, when you are refusing to purchase products that have these toxic substances in them for your kids, it forces them to change, because that's what they care about the most, is the money.
Yeah. And that's why I've targeted these companies directly like I have, because it's the most effective way to do it. And you heard that point in the speech of, we've been playing this game of whack-a-mole for the last 10 years. Where are the elected officials? Where are the people in Washington? Where are our government leaders actually addressing these issues? It's citizens like us that have actually changed the food system more than our government leaders. And this is a huge wake-up call that's happening, because of Robert F. Kennedy's new formed movement around Make Healthy America Again. We're finally getting airway about these topics. And I feel like this is a time that I've never experienced before as a food activist. And I want to use that as my platform to get these issues out that I've been talking about for so long, that need to be addressed and need to be changed. One of the things that was really just disheartening and just proof of what you just stated, Alec, is I was in a staff meeting with several staffers across different congressional and Senate people that, are the people that behind the elected politician, and they help these people every single day, and they bring these issues, and they write the legislation a lot of times along with their constituents. And so I got to speak to a lot of them, and they're like, you know what? The food industry comes into our office and threatens to pay the competitor of ever who's running against the politician if they try to enact legislation around these issues. Literally threaten to say, your boss will not be reelected. I will give money to the other candidate. And these are the tactics that are happening in Washington. And it's dirty. It's stinky. And I witnessed it all just in the short amount of time I was there. And I was just like, damn, this is sick. This is so sick. We have to do something. And I have always believed the power belongs with the people.
Yes.
And that is one of the reasons why I'm taking the Kellogg's petitions to Kellogg's headquarters to deliver them, because they have not responded to me. They will not meet with us about these issues. They canceled a meeting with Jason Karp, who is a dear friend and a partner, and he sent an activist letter to them as a shareholder of Kellogg saying, you need to do this. And they wouldn't even have a conversation with him. They wanted to bring in the Consumer Brands Association, which is a lobbying group, to have the conversation. And then they didn't want Jason to bring in any scientific experts or anything. They wanted to literally railroad him. And we're not going to let that happen, right? And so you should actually see some of the conversations. I have emails about those conversations. We should actually publish those, but before the petition, just so that everyone knows we tried our best to meet with Kellogg's behind the scenes. And now I'm going to be asking everyone, call Kellogg's headquarters on October 15th, let Vani Hari in, let Jason Karp in, let Callie Means in. Callie has been part of this coalition to hold Kellogg's accountable. He is the one who helped organize a lot of these people for Senator Ron Johnson. I frankly think he needs to be the head of the FDA, because the heads will roll, and we will actually maybe see some change in our lifetime in terms of the amount of food chemicals allowed in our food system. And it's a situation where, I've been waiting for the perfect moment to deliver these petitions. And because of the momentum of this situation that's happening, I'm inviting both presidential candidates to join. I really want to see everybody come together on these issues. It's a nonpartisan issue. And as soon as we got back from Washington, I open up my computer and I'm presented with an amazing article from The Atlantic. And The Atlantic writer, who's a political writer, goes straight for the partisan politics, bringing up, divisive names and name calling, quipping that we're trying to make Fruit Loops boring again. I guess, poisoning little children in America and not other countries is more fun, according to her. And this is something that shows what happens when we are given a platform to talk about these issues. They want to create divisiveness, partisanship, and we have to do something different. And I know you've been all about educating your followers and people out there, the American public and the world, really, about not letting the divisiveness nature of politics distract you. And I'll have to tell you, there was a moment in time where I was like, do we respond to this lady? Like, do we call her out for what she's doing, or do we just ignore it? And, I made a huge mistake early on in my career. When I was being attacked for getting the chemicals out of our food, I was on the national stage for getting chemicals out of Subway and Kraft and Anheuser-Busch and all of these big, huge multi-billion-dollar companies. And when I was being attacked, my publisher told me not to respond. And it was the biggest mistake I ever made. I was about to publish my first book. And I should have been fighting back the whole time and exposing these people for who they are. And I wasn't. And so there was a narrative created about me that I was a fear monger, that I'm pseudoscientific, that I'm just a computer scientist. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm not a nutritionist or, a medical doctor. Well, you know what? You don't have to be an expert to know how to eat. You don't have to be an expert to know how to research and investigate. And now I've written 4 books on the topic, right? I have started a company of my own that's revolutionizing the food industry from within. And they still are always demeaning me with labels that don't even represent who I am anymore. And it's really disgusting, what's happening. And the worst part is she doesn't mention the doctors in the room from Johns Hopkins, Harvard, and Stanford in her article. Like, come on. I mean, that she has so much self-hatred for herself that she can't even look past the political the political divide that she's trying to contribute to
Right.
by writing for The Atlantic. And
Was she trying to frame you as like super right leaning in this, or how did she
no,
frame you?
she was trying to frame me as just like an influencer. You know what I mean?
Oh, wow. Like,
You
as
know,
a nobody
like
social
a
media?
nobody,
Yeah,
right?
yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah,
you know what I mean? And I'm like, okay, well,
yeah.
so and the title of it was the Woo Woo Caucus. So yeah, they were
Wow.
trying to label us with derogatory names that were trying to marginalize our message, when what we did was so historic that we talked about ending chronic disease. We talked about saving children from these chemicals. There was an amazing teen that I met, Grace Price, that spoke and testified. And, what she is doing for the next generation just gives me chills. I'm getting chills right now, even thinking about what she is doing, because the people that market these products, the Prime Energy drinks, the Kelsey brothers that are on the Lucky Charms,
My God. Yeah.
all of the things that are happening in marketing right now, they're marketing towards teens, very influential teens that don't know the truth about these food companies. And she is spearheading a campaign to tell them the truth. And it's at a time now, we need this more than ever. And I'm just so thankful to be part of it. I
Yeah,
am.
I'm thankful that you are a part of it, because I know how fiery you are and you won't take no for an answer. I've heard you say that a number of times. You've been given no's on various things and you just keep going until you get a yes. Because it's fresh on your mind, I'm curious, as you were giving this testimony and as other people on this panel with you were giving their testimonies, what was the response from these staffers and these senators? Like, what were you seeing in them as you were giving these testimonies?
Well, during my testimony, there was audible gasps. There was so much applause after every paragraph that I had to stop, and wait. And it was just, it was I felt so fired up from it. I mean, a standing ovation after I was done. It was incredible. People in the room really understood this. They got it. We explained it very carefully.
Yeah.
One of the pivotal moments in the room was when, different senators were walking in and out because, they have other obligations and things. And so some people, were walking in, and we were able to meet some of these people and let them hear a lot of what we were saying. And Senator Mike Crapo from Idaho walked in and talked about how he was listening to Max Lugavere's podcast to help him with his own health issues and his own health journey, and how he is now in his wedding suit because of this, which he had lost a lot of weight and got healthier. And it was just the cutest moment of this dude walking in his wedding suit and telling this story. And you're just like, this is the message we need to be talking about. Why isn't someone interviewing him about what changes in lifestyle he made to improve his metabolic health? I have had the opportunity to become friends with and listen to Dr. Casey Means so much. And she has a plan for people in their book, Casey and Callie, Good Energy, that looks at all of the different things that you need to do from a lifestyle perspective that can reverse course on any health issues and get you off a pharmaceutical drug that you'll be on for the rest of your life, and then will have complications from and not live the highest quality life. And this is what we need from our leaders. We need our leaders to talk about health, because without health, we have nothing.
In nearly all cases with modern health systems, you're waiting months for appointments only to spend a mere 10 minutes with a doctor who quickly hands out a generic diagnosis that is likely rooted in a total misunderstanding of health and causes, and then you're offered a one-size-fits-all medication or invasive treatments with unpleasant side effects. If this sounds all too familiar, consider a different approach with the New Biology Clinic, founded by Dr. Tom Cowan, a respected natural health doctor, author, and speaker. Dr. Cowan's holistic perspective on health and wellness and a deep understanding of the true nature of health and disease sets this clinic apart. With the New Biology Clinic, it's not about quick fixes and suppressing symptoms. The practitioners take time to understand your unique story, recognizing that health is unique to the individual and that illnesses have a variety of causes, physically and metaphysically. Members of the New Biology Clinic enjoy a flat monthly fee that includes a range of valuable services like health consults as needed, practitioner-led live streams on diverse health topics, access to a members-only resource library, and multiple live group sessions every month. These sessions cover fitness, breathing integration, biofield tuning, guided meditation, EFT tapping, and much more. Unlike traditional healthcare systems that thrive on frequent visits, prescriptions, treatments, and suppressing symptoms, the New Biology Clinic's motivation is to make you healthy and keep you that way. Visit newbiologyclinic.com to learn more and use code THEWAYFORWARD for $50 off your account activation. If you're a member of The Way Forward, email hello@thewayforward.com to receive $150 off your account activation. Your journey to genuine healing begins here. If you frequently tune into The Way Forward, you know that I strongly believe chronic and recurring stress is one of the leading causes of illness. And unfortunately, stress has become a commonplace experience for many of us in the modern world. Did you know that magnesium plays a crucial role in managing stress? It's essential for ensuring adequate hydration of your body's waters, regulating stress hormones like cortisol, balancing our nervous and hormonal systems, and producing the relaxing neurotransmitter GABA. Unfortunately, most magnesium supplements you'll find in health stores use only the two cheapest synthetic forms of magnesium. And since they're not full spectrum, they won't help with your magnesium deficiency or do much to support your health. There are actually 7 key forms of magnesium, and you must get all of them if you want to experience its calming, stress balancing effects. That's why I only recommend Magnesium Breakthrough by Bioptimizers. It's the only organic full-spectrum magnesium supplement that includes 7 unique forms of magnesium for stress resilience, better sleep, and better hydration, all in one bottle. For those interested, you can try Magnesium Breakthrough with an exclusive offer. Just go to buyoptimizers.com/Alec or head to the show notes and use promo code ALEC10 during checkout to save 10% on your order. Yeah, so it's good to hear that they were responsive to what you were saying. Like you said, they gave you a round of applause, a standing ovation. How much of an impact do you think this will actually have on regulation itself, though? That's what I'm concerned with here. And let me preface this by giving my own experience. And this was obviously on a smaller level, but I was invited to give a testimony at the Kansas State Capitol 2.5 years ago at the height of the charade of 2020, the charade that began in 2020. And I knew going in that irrespective of what these individuals thought when they were hearing my testimony, that I'm not there for them. I'm there to use this platform because I knew that this would be filmed and that this would be shared amongst the masses and that would help educate people. And that's exactly what happened. The video that I recorded or that they recorded went viral and it was shared all over the place and it helped educate a lot of people on the harms of the COVID measures and the COVID experimental drug. So yeah, I'd just love to hear your thoughts on all that.
So I could say that I want to have more hope that something can be done. I don't want to completely discount the fact that nothing can be done. But I think if the right people are in office, it could happen. But I also think our whole system's rigged against us, and getting the right people in office is pretty much impossible. So,
Yeah.
so it's tough.
Well, and that begs the question, like, how much energy do we give towards that? And I'm not, I used to be how do I put this? A voluntarist, which is a nice word for like anarchist, right? I used to be a voluntarist maximalist where I'm like, or absolutist rather, where I say, no, we should not even be trying to entertain any of that. But I do recognize, like, be silly to take the position that it wouldn't be better to some degree if there are people infiltrating the system, so to speak, to help affect change inside of it, while we also exit that and start developing alternative systems over here and just make that obsolete, like the Bertrand Russell quote. But that's where it's a delicate balance, or it requires that we really analyze how much change can actually be affected here, meaning how much energy do we want to put towards trying to do this when the whole time we could have just been like, let's just ignore them and let's go do our own thing over here. And that sounds much easier than it actually is, but it is possible to affect change at that level. So
You're saying, and I give this thought. I give this a lot of thought all the time. I'm always thinking about this because I want to believe in our system. I want to believe my vote counts. I want to believe that. And it's almost like when you come to the reality that it might not, you have a sense of mourning. And it's kind of like I had the sense of mourning when I decided to opt out of the food system that we have currently in America, where I don't buy things from the concession stand or vending machines. I don't buy processed food products like Fruit Loops. I don't adhere to that lifestyle. I will not go to McDonald's or Chick-fil-A or Wendy's or Burger King or Taco Bell in a pinch if I'm running behind and I don't have any food, right? I don't do it. And not having those options, deciding that I'm going to vote with my dollars when it comes to food, there was a little bit of that mourning of like, gosh, it was so much fun to get a Happy Meal as a kid. Gosh, wouldn't it be fun to like go pick that up for my 3 and 7-year-old right now? Like they would die, like seeing that cute box with the toy inside and all of that. And so there is that mourning of that. And it's like, I feel the same way about politics.
Yeah.
And because I've seen the corruption that's involved in terms of the big food and chemical companies that are literally paying these politicians to be elected and keep them in office, and that's what's preventing legislation from being passed. Knowing that, I mean, I read a whole book about that, Feeding You Lies, and how I unraveled the whole playbook for everyone to know, so that they know that our whole entire system is bought and paid for, and they're doing whatever they can to prevent people like me from getting my voice out. And they're, I want to know what's happening at Kellogg's headquarters this morning. I want to know what's happening at the Consumer Brands Association.
I bet they're freaking out a little bit. I bet they're freaking out a little bit.
I want to know what's going on, right? Like are they freaking? They should be freaking out, because we're coming for them. We're coming for them. The people I have met and are working with now have more passion about this subject than I have ever witnessed. And we all have that personal story, that personal fight of us being deeply impacted by these issues, whether it was a parent dying or themselves getting sick, or seeing a friend, get diagnosed with cancer and dying a year later. Like, we all have those stories that motivate us to do this work, and nobody can take that away from us.
Yeah. Amen. Amen. And during your testimony, you brought up a number of chemicals that are in American versions of American products, which is just insane to think about. In these American products that are then American companies producing products for the European versions, the Australian versions, they're making them much healthier than they're making them here. And I forget the exact figure, but could you share the total number of additives allowed in Europe versus what are allowed here, and just highlight some of the most common ones that are prevalent in food and some of the negative health effects associated with them?
So there's over 10,000 chemicals allowed here in the United States, and there's only 400 approved for use in Europe. And what we have here is the wild, wild west. A food company can create a chemical to do whatever they want, really, in food. And they can hire their own scientists to produce the safety data. They submit that to the FDA. Sometimes the FDA looks at it, sometimes they don't, but they generally just rubber stamp it and move on. And that's why there's been so many chemicals in our food supply. And Americans are kind of under this assumption that there's somebody in Washington regulating these chemicals, looking at the safety data, reviewing this work, but that's not what's happening. And that's why it's gotten to this point where we're using chemicals that are not used elsewhere. Now, some chemicals that I can talk about that are banned in other countries that are still used here, or they're heavily regulated. For example, recently, titanium dioxide was banned in Europe because it's shown that it can cause DNA damage. This is in Skittles. Okay, this is a whitening agent. It's probably what makes the S on Skittles, maybe. I'm not quite sure. But because I don't know their exact formulation, but it is a whitening agent. Now, this is something that you can find in like donuts, Little Debbie's, things like that. I mean, it runs the gamut here in the United States. Then there's TBHQ. This is a type of preservative. Let me see if I can pronounce this, by the way. I've been trying to pronounce this chemical for so long. Okay, it's called tert butyl hydroxyquin. I think that's it.
Sounds like something that you want in your food. Sounds like something that comes straight from nature.
Yeah, if you can't pronounce it, you got to practice it. You don't want to eat it. But this is a preservative that literally affects your immune system to make you more reactive to your environment. So if you already have allergies, it's going to make you more allergenic. It's going to create new allergies. It's going to maybe make you more susceptible to, other types of diseases and things like that. So this is something that's in Reese's peanut butter cups here in the United States, but not in Japan. Okay.
My goodness.
We've got, of course, artificial food dyes. Back in, over now 30, 20, about 20 years ago, I think now, I can't remember the exact date, but they started a warning label in Europe that says, if you use an artificial dye, you have to have this warning label. It says, may cause adverse effects on activity and attention in children. The food manufacturers decided to reformulate their products and take out artificial dyes over there and replace it with blueberry and watermelon juice and carrot juice and beta carotene and paprika to make these bright colors. And instead decided to continue selling us the more toxic version. So the food companies, and this is an important point because the food companies are liable for the harms that they're causing to the American public because they know there is an health issue of why they've already done it overseas. And it's not like they're creating new products. They're using the exact same products. I mean, can you tell the difference other than the French writing on the top of this one than this Fruit Loops box? You cannot tell the difference.
No.
And this goes, this is across the gamut from Cheez-Its to M&Ms to Skittles and Gatorade and McDonald's French fries, as I mentioned. But, I could have been there all day giving my testimony and giving examples of this. And this is something that American food companies needs to stop doing. And I really think at this point, it's not about taking out an certain ingredient or not. It's a bigger issue than that. It's a moral issue that when a food company knows they are harming someone with their product, they have a moral obligation to change that product across the board, no matter what country you live in.
Totally agree with you. And this is where like my libertarian mind comes into play here when it comes to issues like this. Because the mental mind F of having the masses believe that, oh, we have regulators for something like this. And if the regulators say that it's okay, therefore it must be okay, right? And one side of me wants the regulators to start regulating appropriately. And then the other side of me is thinking, and it would take a lot to transition to this point, let's just get rid of the regulators because that just allows the businesses to influence them. And then the people have an authentic approach to knowing if something's good or bad by virtue of no longer having these corrupt government regulators telling us over and over again, these are safe, proven to be safe, these are in food. And then we decide based on our own experiences if these products are safe or not. And then we stop giving them our dollars and then the company goes away. And I know it takes a lot to get to that point, but that's where I'm kind of split right now, that I hope we end up there eventually in some capacity. And maybe there's third-party regulators of various types that are also businesses that you can read different, kind of like Yelp, essentially, right? Yeah. Like rather than having a government agency saying which food companies are best, you have Yelp, or then you also have Open Table, you have Google reviews, and you can sort of look across the board and get an honest representation, mostly honest representation of how good that business is, how good their food is. Do the same type of thing in the private rather than with the government pretending to regulate and then telling people, convincing people that these products are safe.
Sorry, go ahead.
You go ahead. Go ahead.
Here's what I wish would happen. I'm not necessarily for more regulation. What I'm for is like freedom of speech, like not getting our voices squashed in the media because the media is getting advertising dollars from Kellogg's and other food companies and chemical corporations and pharmaceutical corporations. I feel like we need to dismantle that tie, that corruption, so that this information ends up being free for people to understand and educate themselves, and they can make their own choices for themselves. Like I'm not trying to take away your Fruit Loops. I'm not trying to make them boring either. I'm just trying to get Fruit Loops, Kellogg's, to make the exact same formulation they're already making overseas. Like they don't even have to reinvent the wheel. They already make the formulation, and that little bit of formulation is safer for kids, and it's a moral thing to do.
Yeah, it's totally a moral thing to do. I completely agree with you. And there's so many layers deep when it comes to, or so many layers when it comes to food. And even a step below that, okay, they've changed to these other ingredients that are food-based ingredients, but then there's the necessity of having organic ingredients rather than GMO. And then even a step below that, the amount of intention that you're putting into something, because that absolutely matters. We know from Veda Austin's work, Masaru Emoto's work, Gilbert Ling, Gerald Pollack, that our intention about something imprints the waters around us. And that absolutely can be the same for food as well. The intention that you're putting into something. If you're just trying to turn a profit on something rather than I'm going to create the most nutritious product for kids to consume so that they grow up to be healthy, that's completely different. Has a completely different effect. And overall, you see the differences. Like I just came from Europe and Australia for a few speaking engagements. And I'd talked with my wife about this before when we had gone on a Europe trip in 2016. When you come back to the US after being in other countries, the amount of obese people you see walking around is shocking. Like when you're here, it's normal. You're used to it. But when you go to Europe and you're not around that for some time, like I was just in Serbia, I didn't see one overweight person.
Yeah.
Legitimately, I don't think I saw one single overweight person, like morbidly obese overweight person. Then coming back to the US, I'm like, oh my goodness, look at this. You see the difference. And it's because of largely what's in our food. Like the evidence is right there.
Yeah, it really is. And we are in crisis right now. I do think there needs to be a national emergency declared. And, if we're able to get these ideas more widely spread, I think more people will have less suffering.
Mhm.
And that's why I started this work. I didn't want anybody else to feel like I did growing up, sick for most of my life. And I know there's a better way out because now I feel better than I ever have. And I look back at the potential that I could have had as a child had I not been going through these health issues, and what that potential could be for so many people around this country, and what that would mean for the economic prosperity of our country, and just the love and the amount of happiness that would occur if people were truly getting the nutrition they needed to their brains. It would be just a totally different environment.
Yeah. Amen. So well said. And I'm sure there are people who are watching and listening to this right now who look at you and think, well, it's easy for her to say that she can affect change because she just spoke it in Washington, D.C. in front of the Senate. But you've had countless examples of little micro, I guess you could call it like micro activism that you've done. For example, the pizza story from your daughter's school. Could you share that story?
Yeah, absolutely. So, you know, again, anybody can do this. It doesn't have to be the food babe or a food activist to do this. Like, all I did was, I found out that Domino's was being served at my daughter's school, and she was 3.5 at the time. And so she wasn't staying for lunch. But I knew about this, and I knew as soon as she started staying for lunch, I was going to have to do something about it. And so I put my research together. I put the ingredients in a document that I emailed to the headmaster and told her that I think there's better options. Let me help you work on that. And, at first I was met with a lot of resistance. I found out it was all about money, right? How much can we get these pizzas for? But I found a local organic pizza chain that would match Domino's pricing. And that was incredible. And so for a year, my daughter had organic pizza delivery at her school. It was incredible. Unfortunately, a year later, there were some management changes and the decision reversed, which was really saddening. But that really spiraled me into activism mode as well. And what I found out from that situation was that my daughter taking in her homemade pizza every Friday now is actually a revolutionary act for her, and that she's learning to be unconventional in a very conventional setting. And that is building that muscle in her, and it's teaching her that she can stand out and go against the system. And I was like, that's so much better than trying to get organic pizza at her school, because you know what? My daughter's going to be able to handle all the situations when she's different than everybody else out there, trying to shun the horrible processed foods that we're inundated with every single day in our lives here in America.
And during that situation of getting the school to bring in these organic pizzas from this organic pizza place, you were sending the ingredients list in Domino's to emails that included the other parents of other students, right? So
Yes.
what
Yes.
effect did that have of you using your voice, again, on a very small scale, not you speaking in Washington, just in your community? What effect did that have on other parents and thus the other kids?
It was so beautiful. There were so many parents reaching out to me, asking me, hey, what's the warming pouch that you use for your daughter's pizza? Can I do that with my daughter too? And like, yeah, this is so great. Thank you so much for speaking out about this. I will be sending in my own lunch too, that day. And so it was such a beautiful moment to, you know what, here's someone else that's going to be different. Your child has the opportunity to be, first of all, is not going to be alone, is what I wanted to give that message to those parents. I wanted to say, your child will not be alone. My child will be there with their homemade pizza every Friday. And that kind of gave the opportunity for them to be like, oh, okay, I got this. I can handle this. Right. Because that's kind of a fear of a lot of parents. They don't want their child to be ostracized or looked as different. They want them to fit in, because of our own self-defeating prophecies from when we were little, right?
We're pack creatures too. We want to be involved in a group.
Yeah, we do.
Yeah.
We really do. And so it's been a beautiful opportunity, and it's great. It's created a lot of conversation in the elementary classroom too, which is so beautiful, because I went to have lunch with her on a Friday, and it was cute watching the other kids going, we liked Pure Pizza better than Domino's, and them voicing their concerns over the fact that they're eating Domino's now. And I was just kind of smiling and and just enjoying the moment of witnessing it all happen. And I realized that you can't save everyone, even though you want to. You really can't save everyone,
Right.
but the ones that are willing to listen, you can save, and that's pretty freaking awesome.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's such an incredible example of what you can do on a smaller level just in your own community. And I think that's really where a lot of this starts, is educating people that are in your local community. Of course, there are people like you and me out there that are helping to educate masses amounts of people, and that's helpful, but doing it on the community level, I think, is just as important, if not more important, in a lot of ways. Deep sleep, or in-REM sleep, is crucial for our body's daily rejuvenation, repair, and overall well-being. And unfortunately, most people fail to get enough of this essential phase of sleep. It's responsible for some pretty crucial functions, including daily rejuvenation and repair, regulating cravings, weight loss, hormone balance, boosting energy, and more. And if you're not getting enough deep sleep, you may struggle with some of the issues that I listed. There are several factors at play, including things like non-native EMF exposure, artificial light exposure, and circadian dysregulation. But another big reason for a lack of deep sleep is magnesium deficiency. Over 80% of the population is deficient in magnesium, and magnesium plays a crucial role in our sleep, one of which is increasing gamma-aminobutyric acid, or GABA, which encourages relaxation on a cellular level. Magnesium also plays a key role in regulating your body's stress response, and when you're deficient, you tend to have higher stress levels, which, as you can imagine, doesn't exactly help with sleep. Now, before you go out and buy a magnesium supplement, it's important to understand that most products out there only have 1 to 2 forms of magnesium, when the reality is your body needs all 7 forms of this essential sleep mineral. That's why I recommend Magnesium Breakthrough. Magnesium Breakthrough from Bioptimizers contains all 7 forms of magnesium, designed to help calm your mind, help you fall asleep, stay asleep, and wake up feeling refreshed. The deep sleep benefits when you get all 7 forms of magnesium through Magnesium Breakthrough are really noticeable. And as I've shared before, I don't take a lot of supplements, nor do I promote a lot of supplements, but this is one supplement that my family is regularly using. And there's a reason that this is a best-selling product for Bioptimizers. For an exclusive offer, go to bioptimizers.com/Alec, or just head to the show notes and use promo code ALEC10 during checkout to save 10%. And if you subscribe, not only will you get amazing discounts and free gifts, you will also make sure your monthly supply is guaranteed. I wanted to talk also about a lot of people have responded to me when I share the importance of eating organic, and they say, well, look, I can't afford organic foods. And I know that is an issue. I can't afford to shop at natural grocers or Trader Joe's or Sprouts or things like this. What is your message to people who sort of are stuck in that mindset that I can't afford this, therefore I'm just going to do the Cheetos and the Doritos and McDonald's and these other ultra processed, really toxic foods?
When I quit my job to become a food activist full time, I was making no money doing food activism. I quit it cold turkey, and I was scared to death because I thought my husband was going to say, hey, how are we going to meet our mortgage? Like, what are you doing? You know, kind of situation. Instead, he was like, what have you been waiting for? This is a great moment. Like, he was really supportive. And so that gave me the confidence to do it. However, the first thing I did and worried about was, am I going to still be able to afford organic food? And so I started to teach myself the principles of like how I can make this work. And I actually produced a blog post on my blog, Food Babe, 75 ways to save money on organic. And I shared all of the real practical tips that I was applying to my life at that time, because organic food to me was my number one priority. And I needed to figure out how to do this on literally no salary because my salary was gone. I mean, of course, my husband was still working, but it was really tough for a little while. And so it is a situation of whether you really want to do it or not. And I think it's the same fact of as anybody sick on a bunch of pharmaceutical drugs and wants to have a different life. It's that moment of deciding if you want to live a different life. And I think it's the same way with wanting to afford organic food. I think there are so many opportunities right now, whether it's at Aldi or at Costco or at a Trader Joe's, as you mentioned, I feel like is on the more inexpensive side, that give you an opportunity to expose yourself to a lot of organic food. And you can always choose and mix and match based on the level of toxicity in organic food, which the Environmental Working Group every single year produces, the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. You can buy avocados, for example, very conventionally and be completely fine because it's got a thick skin on the outside, or oranges. But maybe your kale and your strawberries and your berries, you choose just to buy organic. So there's options. You don't have to do all or nothing. You can start to make changes. But the most important change you need to make is real food that has been unadulterated. That's one ingredient, something you would buy at a farmer's market. Buy your food at farmer's markets. It's so much cheaper. And that's what I would say to that. So
Love that. And then the other one that I've often heard, and I've heard this from my own family members, and I understand this one because I could imagine myself as a 14-year-old kid suddenly being told, hey, we're not going to eat all this stuff that you've been eating up until now. And in a lot of cases on the surface, especially for kids who are very active and playing sports, spending a lot of times outside, it doesn't seem to be, but who knows what's boiling beneath the surface, that these ultra processed foods are causing any issues yet. Although a lot of kids have acne, anxiety, ADHD, ADD, all these other things that are occurring. But again, on the surface, it doesn't seem like, hey, I'm not getting obese. And that's all that people think about. For the kids or for the parents who have kids that are 12, 13, 14, or a little bit older, and they're still living at home, and they're trying to implement organic foods, implement this new way of eating, what do you recommend to them to sort of get their kids on board? Because I've seen it happen where teenagers especially give a lot of resistance after they have been eating ultra processed foods and then are suddenly being told, hey, no, we aren't having these in our homes anymore?
Well, first of all, as a parent, you're in charge. You know, my kids know I'm in charge about the pantry. You know, I'm in charge. I'm in charge when it's open, when it's closed. Like, you know, pantry's closed. You can have something out of the refrigerator. That's it, right? And you're in charge. And I think we give too much power away sometimes to our children who live in our households, and we let them rule us and control us around, and we have no boundaries around that. Just as we have boundaries of like, don't run in the street in front of a car, we need to have the same kind of boundaries about health and food, right? And I'm not saying to be a dictator, but what I am saying is you earn the money, you decide how that money is being spent. You need to be voting with your dollars and choosing better for you options for your family. And there are a lot of fun products out there that don't use a lot of processed chemicals. And I share those all the time on my Instagram page of swaps. Like, you know, instead of Cheez-Its, buy Simple Mills crackers. You know, instead of Snickers, there's Unreal candy bars, you know, that are using organic ingredients. So like, there's so many opportunities for improvement, and it doesn't have to, again, be all or nothing. I still enjoy the occasional, you know, processed item. I'm just not going to buy a processed item with chemicals and ingredients I don't understand. And
Right.
Thankfully, there's so many people right now, innovative food companies that are doing amazing things and creating products that are healthy and only one ingredient. There's a company I recently invested in, Amara Baby Food, that has these little smoothie melts, and they're using coconut milk yogurt with mango and orange, and that's it. Like literally, like 3 ingredients, and it's a little melt, and it's so much fun for kids to eat. And so, like, I brought that when we went and saw Bluey live on Broadway or whatever, and the kids loved it, and I didn't have to buy anything from the crappy concession stand. So there's so many opportunities to support these brands that are doing the right thing. My brand, Vani, the whole reason I created Vani is because I wanted to create products that were using the least amount of toxic chemicals. I mean, the protein powder industry is absolutely disgusting. You walk into a nutrition store and you look at the ingredients in most protein powders, and you cannot recognize the ingredients. You don't know what they do. There's so many emulsifiers and gums that are destroying the gut. There's artificial sweeteners. There's flavorings being added to trick your brain into remembering that flavor and become addicted to that product. I wasn't a part of any of that. So I knew I wanted to create a protein powder that had the least amount of ingredients, be certified organic, tested for glyphosate, tested for heavy metals, completely transparent in what's in the product. And we've done it. And now we're the #1 plant-based protein powder in the US, right?
That's incredible.
Yeah. I know, it's insane to think about. You were an early supporter. Thank you. And I'm like looking in awe of, like, I'm talking about all these other brands and like, hello, like I'm creating the brand right now that is doing this. And, you know, when we wanted to create a bar, like a snack bar, every single manufacturer told me no. They're like, no, we need to put in tapioca syrup. We need to put in brown rice syrup. We need to do this. We need to do that. And I was like, no, I want to use ingredients I would find in my own kitchen. And we started with a homemade recipe that we had in my kitchen. And we, you know, iterated from there. And it took us years to do it, but we did it. And now it's sweetened with maple syrup and dates, like things that you would make in your own kitchen, and it tastes.
That's what we sweeten our stuff with. Like, yeah.
And like real food, you know, almonds and cashews and peanuts. And so, you know, now we have 12 flavors of our bar, and it's so exciting because they taste amazing and everyone loves them. And, you know, I really wanted to, again, change the food industry from the inside out, because for years I was doing it on the outside, and I said, well, I'm going to try to do it from the inside too. And we've inspired a lot of new innovation in the protein space. There's a lot of companies now, you know, trying to mimic what we're doing, which is, you know, to my coworkers, it's annoying, but to me, I smile and I'm like, this was the
Yeah, it's an amazing thing.
More products, the better, right? That are using.
Yeah, you're
So,
forcing people to
uh,
change. You're
yeah,
forcing people to
you want to
innovate as
copy?
well.
Yeah, if you want to copy Truvani, come on, be my guest because we need more products like that.
It's so cool because I've been very perceptive knowing about Truvani from its like inception. Watching it slowly creep onto shelves in all the health food stores that I go to, everywhere that I've been, I'm like, oh my goodness, this is everywhere, to the point that I'm pretty sure I saw it in Australia at this place called Fox's Pantry. Or am I wrong? I went from Australia to London, London to Ireland, Ireland to Serbia. So it could have been anywhere on that trip.
I can't keep track, but we just launched in Walmart, and that has been so. I'm like almost speechless at the fact that we're in Walmart.
Incredible.
The domain of big food, right? I
Yeah.
mean, I think they have like 6 different sizes of Fruit Loops there that you can choose from, or something crazy, right? And they're on the same in the same building as Truvani, and it's such a beautiful site, and it really is, and it just goes to show that when you support companies that are doing the right thing and producing the right ingredients, and you can get it everywhere. You really
Yeah.
can. And they're giving us a shot, and I hope we make it. I don't know if we'll make it, we'll be there in a year. I hope so.
Yeah.
But I hope, if you see our product in Walmart, go get it, because I want to really show that we have a market for this.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. And I think that things are trending in this direction where more people are becoming interested in health foods. And it's incredible that we have brands like yours that I know are genuine health foods, which is insane that we even have to call it that, health foods versus food. Like, no, this is just food. Everything else is poison. But with that comes in that corporate mindset trying to sort of subvert that industry and put ingredients in things under the guise of health foods that aren't actually healthy. So I know you've talked about this before. What are some common things in quote health foods that we find that aren't actually healthy whatsoever that we should probably avoid?
yeah, so I would say a lot of the health foods right now have natural flavors in them. The quote unquote healthier options of things on the grocery store shelf. And when you get a product that says natural flavor on the ingredient list, it can mean thousands of different chemicals. And that means that it went through a very laboratory intensive process to produce a flavor that could create the 1 millionth best part of a taste. And it's not something that you would find in nature. Let's take, for example, a blueberry. Sometimes it's mealy, sometimes it's juicy, sometimes it's plump, sometimes it's small. So it has different textures. Sometimes they're sweet, sometimes they're sour. And that's what nature provides the palate. So a blueberry has all of these different mechanisms for your taste buds to enjoy different sensations. When you get the exact same flavor every single time in a product, you actually become a pickier eater, and you're unlikely to eat more foods from nature. And so that's why for little kids, I believe that they need to be eating fresh fruits and vegetables for their snacks instead of anything out of the pantry that have these different chemicals in them.
Yeah, totally agree. And I've heard you talk before about the importance of, if your kids are struggling to want to eat vegetables and you're really wanting to get that on their plate, maybe starting like with a coursed meal where you start with vegetables first and then move on to something else. Um, One question I have related to food, I guess this will be my last question, is when are we going to get Truvani Kitchen and have restaurants everywhere?
That is a good question. I think about that all the time, Alec. And my husband looks at me and he's like, "You're crazy. You don't want to get in the restaurant business." You know what I mean? But I'm like, gosh, a food babe cafe? Come on. That would be amazing.
Incredible.
That would be amazing. So maybe one day, maybe one day.
Yeah, I hope you do. I think that's next up on your list at some point. It's got to be, but I'm pulling for you for that one. Vani, thank you so much for joining me. I know you're extremely busy right now, and I so appreciate this. I'm glad that we caught you 2 days after speaking to the Senate, so it's fresh on your mind, and we could get sort of the inside scoop on how that goes. Not surprising to hear about staffers being told that we're not going to, these companies we're not going to pay you. we're going to pay your competitor if you don't comply with what we're doing. And that's typically how politics goes. But it's incredible that you were able to use that platform to get your message out to millions and millions and millions of people. And you're just going to continue to grow, and we're going to continue to vote with our dollar to affect change. So thank you so much, Vani, for everything you're doing.
Well, thank you. I really do admire you. You are one of the most courageous people I know. And so thank you for being a friend, and thank you for, having this opportunity to talk about this. I cannot wait to share this actually with my audience, because I really want them to understand what's happened behind the scenes. So thank you.